But when approaching these experiences, like I'll say the music festival that I really love, it's the Suwannee Halloween, which is in Live Oak in Florida, and it's around Halloween weekend. And really seeing that experience from a sober perspective, first time I went, like seeing how people interacted and how they were influencing each other, I was much more willing to work with plant medicines, especially psilocybin, or at that time, Wachuma cactus. Was a really amazing connected medicine to open the heart. And what I found was this, like, it's almost like I was in a dream. I was in a place like I didn't realize that this existed. And so often society creates this narrative that we're all against each other, and it's just a competitive experience, and it's not as safe as we think it is. But when we can put ourselves in places that people and music and the support systems are there for us to expand and connect, it almost to me creates like something our ancestors were praying for. They're like, but we're not necessarily like labeling it, hey, this is a, let's say this is like a fire dance or a sun ceremony. This is this bringing together for the reason of expanding our connection and for feeling feeling the community. And so I believe our ancestors, they celebrated for this possibility for us to come together to use these, not necessarily just to use these substances, but using these substances in this experience can melt away some of the egoic, resistant, defensive parts of us that typically show up, especially in, I'll say in me, in the community that I can relate to the most, because when I go to a place that's filled with capacity with people, oftentimes I'll have my defensive perimeter up, like, just putting all the safety things into my consciousness, which takes me out of experience sometimes. And so when I'm working with these plant medicines in the same environment, I notice a softness, more of an ability to be in the moment and not thinking about like what if, and putting all these different possibilities or configurations in my consciousness.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, it sounds like you're get into the different energetics of a variety of medicines and earth plant sacraments, but later, when I'm hearing you talk, it sounds like you're taking various substances to not only expand what you're inputting from whatever performer or entertainment is there, but it's softening you into the experience so that when you're in a crowded space, there's less agitation, irritation when homie comes and stands right in front of you.
Yeah,
there's more
exactly. It's more like here's gifts.
Yeah. Got it. Okay, that makes sense to me. I know I keep driving on intention, but I want to go beyond. Maybe not. Maybe don't go beyond. I think these different environments, the music festivals, dance events, yoga fest, I don't know, you name it. Those are already high vibration, naturally, based on what's going on. There's of course going to be shadow in these experiences, and we welcome that because there's light in the shadow. But there's other types of events, like sporting events. I'll say one time I took a microdose and went to a hockey event, a microdose of psilocybin, and it was a Stars playoff game. It was really intense, had great seats, but I, again, am so sensitive. The lights were going, and that was really fun. But the amount of aggression and energy within the crowd was so upsetting to my body. And I had told my friend who I went with, I'm like, this is way too overwhelming for me. I cannot handle this. I don't like it at all. And there's screaming and shouting. So I do think that it's important to think about the setting that you're going to place yourself within and what the natural energetics of that place is. I'm not going to take psilocybin and go to a rap concert or a rock concert if it's not, unless it's would be high vibration rock. In full disclosure to everyone, the music that I input and have for years in my life is not popular music that you're going to hear on the radio for the most part. I'm typically listening to music that's extremely high vibration. The lyrics are empowering and positive and growth-minded. So I just want to place that into your awareness that if you're not paying attention to the lyrics, if you want to go watch a movie, for instance, and take something, what are the energetics of that movie? Is this a slasher? Is this a war movie? I would say if you take something that's mind altering, you might want to go something. I mean, this is when Avatar 3 comes out, right? Something like that is powerful, impactful. Yes, there are elements of violence and aggression, but there's also this deep-rooted message of connectivity and fighting for our traditions, fighting for our connection. And that to me is the intention of what we're doing. And you don't need to be on any type of substance to live with this type of intention and recognize that you're still going to be impacted. But the thing is with medicines, they open up your portal even more. So you are in higher levels of influence. So just keeping that in mind. And that's why I think there's when you're getting to know a variety of medicines, it's important to work within a ceremony space or with a practitioner who can help you, or a trusted ally that can Sherpa you into the energetics of the medicine. Start slow, start low, like small amounts, and just build into the awareness. If you're someone who is more anxious or nervous, that's going to help you a lot. And of course, this is not medical advice. These are just like my thoughts and opinions and Ben's thoughts and opinions. So just take it as that, and trust your own intuition. But I have been someone who is very shy, very anxious about trying substances and being out of control in a space where I could be taken advantage of or harmed. So I think that lands in retention on my end.
Segue off of that. Yeah. So if I can segue off of what you're sharing. So, I think, hearing where you're coming from, it totally brings into my awareness the importance of not taking something for the first time in a public space. Not taking something that someone hands you, for one.
I see.
And then, but also like developing a relationship with yourself, which is really important. And then if you're going to work with plant medicines, animal medicines, synthetic medicines, in a group setting, in an environment where there's other beings, like it serves you well to have a relationship with these things on your own, or in a ceremonial setting. So where you have the understanding of the energy that's happening, the flow, the influence of other people. Some of these things will elicit a natural response. And oftentimes when I'll have, like, I'm doing a meditation or something, and there's maybe a song that comes on, it can elicit an emotional response. And you can really get to know the feeling of how music impacts how people, just like as you shared, like the violence of an experience really becomes uncomfortable, because I think at the core of us, these medicines really connect us to our childlike experience, like the very where we want to play nicely together. We want to collaborate and create as creators, and so we see people like that are bashing into each other, creating violence or screaming. It creates discomfort, right? Because we're so sensitive to that experience, and I've noticed a lot of that in these works. And so, I really appreciate that perspective, because it is so important to know your setting, know where you're going. Like, I think at the essence of all this is we are all responsible for ourselves. And so the more we learn about that responsibility, the more we learn that we are in control of where we place ourselves in time and space. And then thinking about that as part of our intention, right? Like thinking about where we're going to be, how we're going to show up, can enable us to have a more expansive, more connected, more fruitful experience. whether we're working with medicines or not. I think that's like the essence of all of it. It's just gives us the ability to show up somewhere with with our own inside of our own field, and not have to like absorb into other people's, right? And then when we see something like, oh, this is making me uncomfortable, then we can move with that.
Sure.
We got to know that. We got to practice that.
Yeah, I think that's really well said and articulated. And you touched on something that a lot of medicines, just all-encompassing word here, do help you want to play well with others. And that can be really amazing and fun, especially in social settings. And you touched on kind of briefly like the energetics of some of it. So maybe it's time you feel comfortable moving into some of the different sacraments out there. Maybe we can start with our sacraments for Church of Sacred Synthesis, and then move into some of the others that are very common, and touch on the potentials and intentions of those particular medicines, the energetics behind them, and what people might want to consider as far as their use, or even just speaking anecdotally again from your own experience with them.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'd love to. Where do you want to start? We want to start with
citalophotoxin? Let's start with citalophotoxin. Perfect.
Boom. Perfect. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, I'll give you an anecdote with that medicine that when we first started working with it. We had. I'll spare you the sort of entry point story, but essentially, a friend of mine, who was also a co-founder of the church, came down to Austin to begin just for a visit, and we had gotten delivered to us this brand new substance that we had grown, and we decided to do like a 5-day diet on it. So we started titrating up the dosing. We went out to Patternellis Park, or Patternellis Falls, which is this beautiful place where there's like waterfalls, and just I started to notice like a connection that wasn't there before. It was like a dissolving of the space between myself and reality, and the ability to be around other people without thinking about them at all, without thinking about like, oh, this person's a threat, this person's a this, like nothing. It was just, I was just in the experience. It was beautiful. And then we went to another, like a crowded place, and I started to notice the softness, the ability for me to, again, be present with people without having to think about any sort of ancillary details, and I could be present and be with them. And so, with that being said, that medicine began to elicit the experience of connection, and the experience of like harmony with the environment. And so it was like, okay, this is a great thing, and because it was such a light, it's not really intended to take as a massive transformational dose. It's really intended as a microdose to have to be utilized in social settings or in personal settings where it's like you want to work out or do these other things. It can provide benefit there, create spaciousness for energy to come through.
I see. So maybe describe what citalophotoxin is. So for those who don't know.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So
how it varies from other things.
Other plants. So yeah, citalophotoxin is it's a psilocybin mushroom. Well, let's say psilocybin as a compound or molecule is 4-hydroxylated 5-MeO-DMT. So 5-MeO-DMT is the parent molecule, and then psilocybin. I guess there's 2 parents, psilocybin and 5-MeO-DMT, okay. And we cross them together by feeding 5-MeO-DMT to psilocybin mushrooms in the soil as like a fertilizer, essentially. There's an element that's added to the substrate, and then the mushrooms take the 5-MeO-DMT up into the process because it's a tryptophan. It's in the tryptophan family, and that's what mushrooms are actually doing. They're taking tryptophan from the grain and converting it into psilocybin. So 5-MeO-DMT is in the tryptophan chain. I know we're getting into the chemistry of it, but it takes it up and it makes it, it puts 4-hydroxy group on it, so it makes it edible. Because typically you can't eat 5-MeO-DMT. Your gut will destroy it. So the only ways to consume 5-MeO-DMT, which is another sacrament that we work with, the church, is intranasally by vaporizing it or by suppository or intravenously.
Right. So, and we'll get to that in a bit. I appreciate the breakdown for people, but I really want to stick to the energetics and how these impact, how cytomethocin varies from psilocybin, which is what most people talk about, and why we're doing one over the other in certain settings. And and it's crisp and short as we can on these, so that we can dive on other sacraments.
Yeah. So psilocybin, like 5-MeO-DMT, it has an affinity for the serotonin 1A receptor, the 5-HT1A, as we call it, and that receptor is responsible for the rest digest cycle. Really, what it's doing is it's stimulating the vagus nerve, and which slows your respiratory rate, slows your heart rate, lowers your blood pressure, puts you in a state of relaxation. So then you can be more in tune with your senses, like your sight, your hearing, your smell. Those can feed your brain, essentially, in a more pure way. Whereas psilocybin has an affinity for the serotonin 2A receptor. So what that receptor is doing, it is processing your senses. So your sight, hearing, smell, taste, feel are going through that receptor. So what that's doing is it's actually generating out of what I call artifacts in your sensory experience. So let's say you have a baseline sensory experience that you exist in. You wake up in the morning, like this is your senses are feeding you. You look at something, you're seeing your vision. And when you put psilocybin in there, it's almost like maybe putting a crystal inside the synapse. So then as the experience comes through, it's coming through this like slight filter or shift. And so it's feeding you, and you don't even have to have your senses to be on for it to be experiencing, because it's going in the synapse. So it's feeding your experience. It's feeding those sensory experiences. So obviously, in contrast to when you're working with 5-MeO, it's really 5-MeO compounds across the board. So all these 5-MeO compounds, there's 5-MeO tri-trip, there's all these other experiences, but they all work in the same system, the parasympathetic nervous system. So it's not really influencing your sensory experience, but more clearing out the space from your subconscious to have a pure sensory experience.
Got it. Okay. So, and to put this in layman's terms, like really clearly, why, if someone was to microdose psilocybin or cytomethocin, when would be better, if there is, for the common person to take one over the other, in your opinion?
Psilocybin is going to, at a microdose, let's look at the technical, microdose should be subperceptual, so you're not really even getting effects from it, as far as like, you're not really supposed to experience it.
Okay, or higher dose, but being in a non-traditional ceremonial setting.
Yeah, so with cytomethocin, it's not going to create like an artifacts. So if you've ever taken psilocybin, the walls are breathing sometimes, things start to move, you start to feel density in the environment. Cytomethocin doesn't produce that. There's not the walls breathing, there's not this energetic density. It's almost like a thinner, more connected to what reality is, and without the artifacts, without the walls breathing.
Well, then we have to define what's reality. You mean just the crispness of what we are projecting into the perceived.
Yes.
You have to say perceived reality, right?
Sure.
There are different realities that we won't get into today. But
let's say objective reality, like what is actually in the environment.
Like this here, this is a light one.
Yes.
This as clear as possible, and it's not going to be like transforming and showing its energetic self.
Right.
The spirit animal that is within this is not going to present itself to you under silent thought.
Not typically. No.
Okay. Well, then that's helpful and interesting. Okay. Well, beautiful. That makes sense to me. So It just depends. It would be coming back to intention again. What is the intention that you want to have? Do you want to have these visuals, these artifacts being formed? Do you want to be like rural, like really playing with altered state of perception, altered reality, or do you want to be in a crisp, like clear? That's what I'm hearing. Connected.
Yes. And also what I noticed with psilocybin too is it can sort of bring up things to process. Like processing can happen. And this is where I don't, outside of a microdose, I don't work with psilocybin in public spaces because of that. Because when you start to process, the consciousness can latch onto other beings and project into them the process. You're like, okay, there's a man that looked like the thing that was creating discomfort in my life. And it can create this like energetic like field that becomes, wow, like now I have to be in this, and that's okay, but it's like this is where certain medicines are more suited for certain environments.
Sure. Okay, so perhaps then we should move on to other sacraments, medicines of sorts. We'll also call them medicines because they're outside of our church's bandwidth at this time. But maybe now moving into like MDMA. That's a synthetic. How does that feel? I've danced with it. You've danced with it. A lot of people play with MDMA. A lot of love chemicals going on there. So most people tend to take those in environments where it's a social, and either with a partner to enhance connection or to go out into society and play. Many people take them for shows and concerts, in sexual settings, intimate parties, things like that, because in my opinion, it can be it like dissolves walls and the anxiety of being able to connect with someone. You just more easily can chat and flow with people. And if that's not something that comes natural to you, then it can be beneficial in that way. The harm, I think, is depending on if you're familiar with it, the dosing, where it's being sourced from, and influences that are coming forward while you're under that medicine, and it can be utilized to cause harm.
Yes, I agree.
So I think when using it, again, intention comes back to this, is like, what is my intention? And then coming up with agreements within yourself of your boundaries that you might have. If you have no boundaries, you want to dissolve them all, fantastic. But to me, I take it, I always have a discussion beforehand with myself of like, okay, what are my limits, and what are things now that I'm in this sober experience, I know that I'm open to exploring and dissolving of walls around. But I would love to know your thoughts and feelings on it.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is very important, and also extending beyond the self and like having our own boundaries and our own conversations. It's also having the conversation with those who we're spending time with, whether it's our partner or whether it's a group, having the understanding of safety as far as what the plan is for utilizing this and how it's going to be worked with. So there is a danger there. So like bringing that into this is an important conversation around like influence and artificial influence that can be, people can utilize this medicine for harm because it's going to oftentimes completely remove the resistant parts of us and make us very vulnerable to connection and sharing, which is a beautiful thing if you're in a trusted environment with people you trust, and you have boundaries that people respect. And oftentimes this medicine can, as you said, like dissolve boundaries, but also if we're not clear with other people, then we don't have a good foundation of our own limitations, then those can be crossed very easily. So I think it's important to use these things responsibly. But yeah, there's a when working with them safely and with all of the intentional protocols in place as we approach it, this medicine can really elicit a connection to the experience that is something that many people haven't experienced maybe in their whole life.
Yeah.
Oftentimes
it's very hard of thing. People aren't feeling that sense of connection, and then when you get that like drop, It's like, whoa, this is what love feels like.
That's right.
The first time I explored this particular medicine, I was heavily meditated, very happy in my life. And I remember asking the people I was with, hey, is it working? Are my eyes dilated? They're like, yeah, you're definitely being influenced. And I was like, I don't feel any different. I feel exactly the same. And then many, many months later, I had entered into a trauma state in a romantic relationship. So and my own personal energetic processes in energetic health had decreased significantly. So when I took it that time, I felt that drop, and I was like, oh, this is why everyone loves it. But I'm kind of a purist, have been a purist in many ways, knowing that I've explored energetics and healing on my own in like the raw, pure way without using any substances. So I know that other people can get there too. It's just about how dedicated are you in your waking life to do the beautiful steps and processes that give you that naturally. But what I think the benefit is, if you've never felt that openness, that sense of love, connection, and you have that experience, and then someone shares with you, like I am now, like you can do this without this medicine, but then you know what you're looking. I don't want to say like you're chasing, but you know what you're looking for. You know what it is. So it's now been brought into your field of awareness and experience. So you can get back to that experience. And it's quite beautiful. Yeah. So that's where I've kind of shifted in as I've explored new horizons in the last several years, with the state of curiosity and people that I trust. I started to see why other people don't want to raw dog their healing, or raw dog their experiences. They want, I shouldn't say raw dog, but you know what I mean when I say that, like very much like move through it in the non-medicine way. And I can see why people do that. But I want to encourage anyone who's watching this to, engage with other conclave shares, come into energetic practices, and continue to cleanse and purify your system, and look at these medicines as ways to enhance your experience. If you're having a sticky point that you can't move through your energetic practices, your meditations, therapy, whatever your processes are, then you can start to feel into, okay, I might want to work with a medicine, and then have an intention of why. Or like, I'm going to this concert, and all my friends are going to be there, and everyone wants to get into this connected state, and this is high vibrational music. We're going to open ourselves up and just be in a state of worship and love of this experience, which can be quite phenomenal.
Yeah. And I'll piggybacking on what you're saying, thinking about it is possible, and I think it's important to make the distinction that all these states are possible to get to completely sober with your own experience. Now, oftentimes individuals may not have the time or the space or capacity to dedicate, or they just
I'm gonna challenge you there.
Well, maybe there's
everyone has the time. It's what your value system allows for and what time you create for yourself. So everyone
well, everyone can make the time, but we've created in our society, we've created this experience of constant chasing of external validation, new TVs, go watch the movies, doing things that are deleterious to our personal expansion. And oftentimes, an acute intervention of a compound can shift the perspective drastically in a moment, right? And so, like an experience with MDMA, let's say that someone is they work 60 hours a week. They're spending all their money on TV and things that aren't really fulfilling to them. Right. Yeah. Yes, numbing agents, exactly. Avoidant behaviors, and they get an opportunity to work with. Let's just use MDMA as an example, with their partner or with their friends, and they are able to experience a level of connection and love that they never thought possible, that they've been looking externally to find, and it's something that comes from within. And that level of connection can usurp anything they could ever buy or fill themselves with. And what that can do is give someone let's say a destination for their consciousness to go like, how do I get back there? And sometimes people without the right training are going to go like, we keep taking these drugs to get back there. But the real training is, how do I get back there without necessarily having to work with these medicines? Maybe working with them to continue to focus in on the direction, but the eventuality is to attain these states just by living life, waking in the waking state.
Sure. So some, I think one of the shadowy sides of medicines is people are chasing experiences. They're not doing any integration. They're not doing any processing and like conscious processing. Change is going to happen, but unless you're actively like taking that like burst in rapid expansion and working with it and making conscious choices after that, you're not going to have lifelong lasting, like, how do I say this? Like, you're not going to collapse timelines and like have a quantum shift in your life, but you absolutely can. But we're kind of going off a little bit away from the energetics, a little bit of these medicines, and I love where this subject is going. So I think it's important to have these, but I want to kind of steer us back into maybe some other common medicines that people use that are used for healing. But I've also seen them take them out in public, and one of them is ketamine. Are you comfortable?
I was thinking that one right now in my head.
Another synthetic.
I was just thinking that word.
Okay, perfect.
Well, yeah, I'd love to talk about ketamine. I think it's so important. I think that's a very important conversation. Right now, ketamine is rampant in a lot of places, and it's, I'll just be frank, it's a dangerous compound.
Yeah.
And it's not expansive, it's collapsive, in my view. It creates a collapse of consciousness, shutting off a disconnection. It is not a psychedelic. You know, we lump it in with these medicines, and I think this is why it's important to have this conversation, is because the culture is lumping it in with psychedelics, but it's not a psychedelic. It's not a psychedelic medicine. What I believe is life is psychedelic. Life is a hallucination.
Yes, it is.
Like, just take 3 hard, deep breaths, and then look around and be like, oh shit, things are shit.
It's all a dream.
Yeah. So when people say that I took ketamine and then I had this like psychedelic experience, it's like, no, because what's going on is you shut yourself off completely. When you come back into consciousness, you're going through what is awareness, and what is awareness? Yes. It is varying states of perspectives that are influenced by ourself, the environment, our life, our feelings, and that's all psychedelic. This is all a projection anyway. So, but ketamine itself, it is what I've noticed in group settings and even therapeutic settings, it creates dependency. It's very habit forming. And also it makes, it's almost like zombifies people.
Interesting. And so why are people out in like the first time I ever saw ketamine, I was at Burning Man, and someone offered it. I was like, I don't really know. It didn't seem like, I don't know what the energetics of it is. Like, how does it impact the body? What is the attraction to use it outside of a clinical setting with a therapist?
Well, it's just like anything. People are, from my perspective, people are going to use anything that is mind altering and it's quick. They take a bump and then ride out.
I see. So what I'm hearing, and this comes, it sounds like people are just wanting influenced, impacted. Some people really like to be on the ride of their body being under an influence, the influence of something else.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. I agree.
Interesting to me. So I've never done like ketamine to any level where I could feel anything. I tried a tiny amount and I was like, I don't feel anything.
Yeah.
The first time. Yeah.
Can I share an anecdote?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the first time I worked with ketamine, I was at a party, and it was like a conscious gathering from what I understood it to be. It felt like that. We were using cannabis and some microdosing some mushrooms, other plant medicines, but it was like, there was a high vibe DJ there. We're playing music and like just dancing and really having a great time. And this person's like, would you like to try ketamine? I was like, oh, okay. I'll give it a shot. Like, I'll try anything. And like, it's not going to kill me. It's not going to, there's no contraindications. I was thinking about any like risks associated. And so I took some, and all I remember was feeling like I was losing capacity to be a human. And I started to feel like almost like drunk. I was like, things were not, I'm like, this is not great. I've been to this level of alcohol intoxication where I was disassociating from life. And I'm like, oh, this feels like that time where before this journey, I was a heavy drinker, a number of years ago, like maybe, during my Army career. And I remember getting so drunk where I was just turning off. I'm like, oh, I'm leaving. And this is what that felt like. I'm like, I don't like this. I don't want this. I don't want to turn off. Like, I want to connect. I want to be connected. I don't want to be disconnected. And so, from that experience, I started to notice the effects of it and how it impacted other people. Sure. And I've watched people go into K-holes, and it's just like, this is.
And a K-hole is like, it's like a whiteout or a blackout, or they're just kind of like dead in the water.
Just
so it's not a social, it doesn't sound like it's expansive energy.
No, it can grow that very rapidly because people start doing the bumps, and then eventually they're.
Got it. Okay, well, you'd mentioned Wachuma. I microdosed Wachuma once with this very special human, and really liked it. It felt heart-opening. It felt way different than other like microdoses I've had of cytomethocin, psilocybin. What's the draw to utilizing it in a ceremony space, and what is the draw to use it in a more public setting, non-traditional setting?
Sure. Well, Wachuma, the active compound mescaline, and what I noticed, worked with it in the ceremonial setting. It's just like it's almost like an exercise in being present with the moment now. You talk about like collapsing time, collapsing, forward thinking or backward thinking into being totally here in the present moment. And so so some of the approaches with Wachuma especially are like a lot of walking and being in nature. And those invite in the reminder of our connection to the natural world, and really letting anything outside of this present moment melt away. Oftentimes us as humans, we see ourselves as a compilation of experiences, which create a narrative for us to be like, I am this person. I am Ben. I did these things in my life, which makes me this or makes me that. And with Wachuma, it like sort of erodes all that. There's no more identity. It's just like, I am this. I am here in this present moment. And then, part of the process that I follow is like creating gratitude practice around that medicine. So work with that medicine is like being grateful for everything that's around, being grateful for the air and the water and the sea and the trees and
which to me it sounds very similar. It sounds very similar to MDMA, but it's not synthetic. There's no jittery, come down, weird clenching of the.
No, it's not amphetamine. MDMA is amphetamine, and so you get that like what I call like tweaker. That tweaker come down. It's always like this, like electricity plugging in and out.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Well, we're getting short on our time, and I wanted to leave room for just talking about a few more things. Some people will take LSD like a microdose or a larger dose and go out into non-traditional settings. So would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, LSD can be fun. It creates a lot of energy in the body, and it's hallucinogenic at like a lower medium doses, but not like mushrooms would be, which it can bring a lot of artifacts. Oftentimes you get like the feeling of like, to me it's like the texture of like feeling what paint would feel like, or like colors feel like paint. But it's much more social. There's much more ability to engage with that medicine. But there's also tolerance. So, that's when people would go like, oh, I took 6 hits of LSD, like, holy moly. But this is like day 3, where day 1 they took 1, day 2 they took 2, because you have to double it if you're going to take it, like a music festival, for instance. You have to double it because it creates what's the word? Yeah. You have to take more of it. Yeah, yes, it's very tolerance building. Akin to ketamine. That's one of those things where you have to continuously stack it. Same thing with mushrooms, which really make these medicines non-habit forming. Outside of psychedelics are like they typically don't create habitual use. People want to use them like for intentional experiences, but like day 2, you're like, no, I want to take that shit again.
Right. Yeah, sure, of course. And it's been my experience through hearing other people's stories, none of my own, because I find myself to be very respectful and intuitive about what is best for me in most settings, whether it's ingesting any type of medicine, the food I eat, or just knowing what type of meditation I need to be doing. But what I've seen is that when some people are abusing substances, eventually the medicine hits back. It you get a sucker punch, and it's like a wake up call that you've had enough. It's time to integrate. You need to stop. And that's what I think is really powerful about a lot of these more earth based medicines. But speaking about ketamine, I had a friend who had a ketamine addiction, and I won't get into his full story, but basically in his ketamine experience, God came to him and told him that he needed to stop immediately. And he did that morning. And I've heard many other stories. Another friend of mine with ayahuasca, he's done I don't know how many ayahuasca ceremonies. Ayahuasca is not habit forming, but people keep mining themselves with ayahuasca, and they don't go into proper processing and healing outside of it. And she started giving him really bad headaches. He couldn't take the medicine anymore until he started doing real work outside of the ceremony space, and now he's able to take the medicine again without this terrible headache. So I just want to say thank you to the greater intelligence out there that helps keep us in check. And I wanted to ask you, is there any other medicine that you want to touch on just briefly before we maybe talk about the light wands and their use? Because they're something that can be used, but I don't know what our thoughts on are using them.
Well, yeah, I'm happy to segue that. Especially when we're talking about light wands. We'll reverse back to talking about MDMA as an amphetamine, and it's the studies show there's some neurotoxic effects from it, and so what we do after, like with MDMA, is like a cycle. Is we take tryptophan, typically 5-HTP, right? Is like a smart stack to bring into the medicine. So the use of for my practice, when I work with MDMA, I typically close out my MDMA experience with 5-MeO-DMT, with the light wands, as a landing experience, right? Because that is in the tryptamine family, and that's in the tryptophan chain. It's just a higher order, so it's a literal serotonin analog. Mm-hmm. And so what your brain is craving is serotonin. You just depleted all of it. You just used all of it. So tryptophan is a good way to feed us back, but we can accelerate the process and have a useful experience to land to really get into the restful state and get the brain back into healing itself from any of the, let's say, like neuro damage that's done by this other compound. So there is some interplay here in this experience where we can use these things to enhance and to facilitate a quality experience.
Sure. I know one thing we didn't touch on, and I know I want to come back to light ones. I want to close out with them because I have something radical I want to share. Publicly. I'm just gonna go for it. But we didn't talk about DMT. People do DMT like vapes, right? And I've seen shows and things. So can we just briefly touch on the energetics of just the DMT vape itself and uses outside of ceremony?
So DMT is a serotonin 2A agonist. So it's going to work in your sensory experience, but primarily in the visual cortex. So you're primarily going to get visual experience. So when you use large amounts of DMT, this is where all these beings and artifacts and other things present themselves in a very expansive way. So yeah, it really affects our ability to see beyond the veil, right? They talk about breaking through this, whatever the membrane is, and so I think it's a really powerful and potent way to access these expanded states in a very rapid way. It's almost like because it is the visual component to ayahuasca.
Sure.
It is, but it's like a flood dose of that in a short period of time.
Right. So can people take a strong, I don't know what you call it, a strong vape, suck, hit, inhale, and still be at a concert dancing and moving their bodies versus something that I need to lay down, right? Because that's
so microdosing it. So going into that, talking about microdosing it, and this is where a responsible human that has a relationship with these medicines, that have worked with them on their own, has an understanding of, okay, if I'm going to bring this into a show, I would bring one into close the LS Dream show, and then microdose it. When things are microdose this and allow the experience to become more fulfilling with the senses, and light to be brighter or even fractaled into the experience. So it can create, you can use it as a microdose. Same thing with the light wands. You can use them as a microdose. You don't have to go into this deep transformational state. It's all transformational, but we can tiptoe in and allow it to enhance our experience. So I think there's a place for that.
Okay. I think that's awesome, and I appreciate that share. So kind of rounding out this conversation, going back into 5-MeO-DMT, typically people are doing healing setting with UFO, right? They're actually there with a practitioner like yourself, and because it's such a process where you need to have someone there to care for you, and because you're completely unwinding in a way, right? But our amazing church has established this sacrament, and that is a synthetic version of it, right? Known as the Jaguar Light Wand, which is meant to allow for people to microdose and titrate up their own experience. So what are your thoughts on people utilizing this outside of the ceremony space? Or self-ceremony space?
Yeah, well, I mean, it all, I think I'm a supporter of freedom of safe use. So if for me, when working with that medicine, when I was at, I'll just say specifically last MAPS conference, Psychedelic Sciences, we had gone to Desert Dweller show, which was during a conference, and I brought one of these light wand, pre-light wand with, and I just remember standing there. I didn't know if I was going to use it or not. I just have it. To me, it's shit, this is an acute intervention. If I'm having a panic, or someone else is having a panic attack, or some other veteran and I've used it for this, where they're I can give them it's quick shot of relaxation. So anyway,
because it unwinds you. If you take a small sip, it's not so overt where you need to lay down.
Right, exactly. It's just
I feel
the body becomes
flush. I have not tried standing up. I've only done this laying down, and I recommend just laying the fuck down or sitting down. But that makes sense for that type of space. But it's, to me, not something that I've experienced or explored enough with yet to understand it in a public setting. Yeah, but I do have a recent experience.
Ooh, I'd love to hear it.
And maybe this will be a teaser for a later conversation, and that is sex and psychedelics, sex and medicine. And it doesn't necessarily have to be with another person. It can be just self-intimacy, intimate play, or just being in the sexual energetics, the energetics of creative life force. So today I felt really comfortable, woke up this morning in bed, went into this particular Vedic mantra meditation that I do from time to time. And afterwards just decided, I think I'm going to explore the light wand. So I got the light bottle out, and I'm very gentle with myself. I don't just like normally like take the, I don't drink the liter of vodka, right? Like I want to like a little sip. So just like sipped my way in and started to feel into the unravel and went into the experience of like, to me, it feels like this spiral just like unraveling and unwinding. And that felt really good. Moving some sound through my body out of me, like finding sticky points in my voice and just like knowing those were things that need to be cleared out of my all of the layers of my body. And then felt really good. So then I was like, okay, let me see what this experience would be like as I continue to play with the medicine. And what I found was my creative life force energy, my pleasure portal really opened up. And I went into this amazing unraveling and experience through the 5-MeO that helped me open up energetic systems within my body that don't come out to play that expansively all that often. And I was just by myself. So I do think that there are applications for these different medicines where sensual energy does have a place. And we've discussed and experienced this under like mushrooms for me. Have been a deep unraveling in a similar energetic way. So I just want to say, I think that there are really powerful ways to explore medicines, whether it's through self-ceremony, whether it's out and play with others, or in the ceremony space. And I really feel grateful to have had what was once a limited viewpoint of it's not respectful to the medicine and the energy of the medicine to take these things recreationally and go out and play. Like you need to take them and use them in a very serious manner where you're healing only. And I never merged it with my play. And I'm a very playful person. So since, the last, I don't know, several months to last year, I've seen the places where there's great use for it. And part of my mischievous self gets really excited when I'm out in life and I see people breaking up a chocolate bar. And I'm like, oh, I know what they're doing. That's a mushroom chocolate bar. Fuck yes. They think they're just here to have fun with mushrooms, but they're actually healing themselves. And that is phenomenal. So I really appreciated this conversation, Ben, and want to like give you the floor if there's anything you want to touch on that we haven't discussed just yet.
Yeah, well, I'd like to, I'll just add to where you were going. It's like society has been so censored around our own life experience and how we connect with other human beings and ourselves. And there's so much to be said about war and murder and all these different like disgusting aspects of human beings, but we censor the most important aspect of us, which is sexual energy and connection. And this ability to connect to ourselves in that way, where it's pleasure and it's creation and it's creative life force that's flowing within all of us. And enabling ourselves to connect to that is, I think, a very important aspect of this experience and how we grow past the war mentality and into the collaborative, the creation mentality, into the mindset that we're here for this experience. So I do invite in this idea of working with these things to enhance our connection and enhance our ability to be present with our friends, our families, with ourselves, with our partners, in all the myriad of ways. And just reminding that, I think that getting back to that state, that state of creation is part of this experience, and we're all learning to get back there in different ways. So these medicines can enhance that, and we should definitely look at them in that light as a catalyst to deepening into the things that maybe we haven't connected with in a long time or ever.
Yeah, beautiful. So well said. Well, on that note, I think we should wrap up this conversation. Thanks everyone who's tuned in. Thanks, Ben, for all of your beautiful wisdom. And yeah, if you want to join us on June 21st, 8:30 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, we will be doing the live stream. You have to register in advance to be a part of it. If you are a member, this will be available to you later on a separate platform for members only. And So if you can't make that particular date, still register if you want, or just join as a member, and we'll be sure to have this experience available to you. That's all for me. Ben, back to you.
Yeah, thank you.
Goodbye.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Thank you. Yeah, we'll include a link to register in the video, so you'll be able to find that in the description. And then, yeah, if you don't make it, become a member of the church, you'll have access to the recording of the experience. And going forward, the hope is to do these meditations once a month, leading into next year, where there will be, we'll have some bigger news around that upcoming. So I'll hold that close to the chest for now. But so
please, guys, like this video, share with others, subscribe to the church's channel. This is how we know you want to engage with the content. Please provide feedback in the comment section or fill out that survey that we mentioned at the beginning, so that we know for future Heroes Doses what would really tickle you to have discussed.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, everyone, and we love you.